and welcome to Small Town Big Business, a podcast about doing big business in small towns. I am your co-host for today, Deb Barnett. I'm also the executive director for Southern Illinois Now, where we focus on economic development in the 17 southernmost counties of Illinois to advance our region as a great place to live, work, and do business.
Yeah, and I'm Russell Williams. I'm co-host. I'm director of EThOs. EThOs is the downtown small business incubator. We have co-working spaces. We also do training and development to help new businesses and existing businesses grow. And you're joining us here in our recording studio here on Tower Square Plaza in the Citadel building. The Citadel is a 1914 neoclassical building, and we are in the process of renovating this building, but we're also part of a downtown revitalization here on Tower Square Plaza. Most of the time when we're recording, you'll hear the noise outside, the construction, everything, but we're excited that that's happening. I don't hear anything right now, so we should be safe for this recording. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've got a great group of followers, and we have sponsors that we want to thank them for sponsoring the Small Town Big Business podcast. So we want to thank Arcadia Wealth Group and Black Diamond Harley Davidson and RV, Fowler Heating and Cooling, Swinford Media Group, the Watermark Auto Group Foundation, and Banterra Bank, and of course, Southern Illinois Now.
If you're new to Small Town Big Business, we interview small business owners about how and why they're so successful in small towns like right here in Marion, Illinois, or in the case of today's guest, along the beautiful rolling hills of Southern Illinois in Cobden, just down the road. And so first of all, let's welcome our guest from Honey Heist Mead Company, Jackie Robbins. So welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me.
I've been so excited to have you on today because number one, Honey Heist Mead Company is new to the area. We're going to talk all about it. But my first introduction to you was when my husband and I visited Honey Heist. We had seen all the buzz online and social media, and everybody's so excited about it and fell in love with it, just was so impressed. But you walked over to the table, and I just started asking you about the company, how it got started, a little about your story, and I was so inspired. So we're going to share a little bit of that story today. Let's start with, you are from Southern Illinois, but moved away for a bit. Talk about what took you away and then what brought you back.
Sure. So I am from Southern Illinois, born and raised, bounced around quite a bit. My stepfather was in the National Guard, so he would move around to different armories. So Murfreesboro, Ava, Willisville, Sparta, Carbondale. I think I moved every year.
Wow.
Until I was in the 5th grade, where we landed in Carbondale for the longest period of time. And so I stayed there until I graduated, and then I joined the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years.
Thank you for your service.
You're very welcome. Spanish, French, and Albanian linguist.
Really?
Yes, and a rifle and pistol range coach in the Marine Corps. So
I'm not sure you shared all of that.
No,
oh my goodness.
We could do a whole other podcast, I think, about those adventures. But by the time I got out 5 years later, I had been to more countries than states in the United States.
Oh, wow.
And I had told my recruiter I did not want to travel because my first flight ever was to boot camp. So
really?
I was Southern Illinois to the core. And so, 5 years later, I came back, graduated from SIU with a degree in advertising and integrated marketing communications from the School of Journalism.
Okay.
And then, my last year of school, the retail bug got me. I helped build the new Dick's Sporting Goods that was in Carbondale. Yeah. And they hired me on as their certified fitness trainer. And every day was something new and challenging. I was able to kind of flex my leadership skills, communication skills. It was never boring, which I was really concerned about, having come from the Marine Corps to potentially a desk job at an advertising agency. So I stuck with retail for 18 years.
Wow.
And it took us all over the country, from St. Louis to Kansas City to Nashville, Memphis, and ultimately Washington, D.C. Yeah. And we were there when the new bug bit me, mead. And so from that point on, we started strategizing about how to get back to Southern Illinois and open a meadery.
That's awesome. So why did you come back?
I always I actually was voted least likely to come back in high school. But once I was in the Marine Corps and we would have those long weekends, I would come back to visit family and friends, and I would always bring somebody with me that when I said I was from Illinois, they would say, "Oh, do you know so-and-so from Chicago?"
Right.
Of course.
And I would bring them here if they didn't have anywhere to go, and they were always like, "Wow, it's so green, it's so pretty, there's so much to do." And I would say, "Yeah, we've got to go here, we've got to go there." And I would take them on this 3 or 4 day adventure.
Yeah.
And I found myself slowly
rediscovering the things.
Exactly.
Right.
When you live somewhere, you're not a tourist as much as you should be, which is why that new Goose Chase app is so cool,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
It helps you become a tourist again. But
And our friend and other co-host Jennifer Olson always says that, like, at least once a month, go through Southern Illinois and live like a tourist. Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. And so every time I left, I just found myself missing it more and more. But, you know, retail, if you're willing to move, then you'll move up quick and fast if you're good at your job. And so we just continued to chase the promotions and, you know, the new districts. So it really wasn't in the cards for me until my husband was working from home permanently. And I think after COVID, I just kind of got worn out with retail and people in that way. So it became time.
Yeah.
to
So
come
you were
home.
one of many that COVID inspired a transition, a change
Absolutely.
of life.
Yeah. And that's when I started making mead, was during COVID. My husband always knew what mead was. His grandpa was the head of the Beekeeping Association in Middle Tennessee. And so he grew up knowing what mead was. And he had tried to introduce me to it, but it was too sweet. I didn't really like it. Once we moved to the East Coast, there were a lot of meaderies, and he introduced me to good mead. And he actually even started helping at a local meadery in Maryland. And the owner encouraged us to get some supplies and start making it ourselves. And we weren't new to fermentation. We made all of the beer for our wedding for 100 people. We had made wine before, but it was like jet fuel, not great. And so we had just received all of the supplies to start making mead when COVID happened. And so here we are, Washington, D.C., 800 square foot apartment. He still works from home. Nothing has changed for him. But my company shut down for 3 months. And so every day I'm like, do you want to go on a bike ride? Do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? And he said, you
Get
know
outside.
what? Crack open that mead kit and start getting a hobby, because I still have to work. And so I moved him out of his office because I needed a mead room.
Right.
And he worked at the kitchen table while I became this mad scientist of flavors. And it really skyrocketed from there. Within 90 days, we were looking at property in Southern Illinois and starting a meadery.
That's awesome. Okay, so this is all new to me. I don't know about mead. I'm very curious. And so as a novice, can you just describe what is mead?
Sure.
And why is there a business in it?
Absolutely. Mead is the world's oldest alcoholic beverage. Honey existed and fermented well before sugar and grapes, malt, barley, anything else. So essentially, mead is honey that has been fermented into alcohol. So the sugar source that is fermented is what dictates the type of alcohol that it is.
And it's a very sweet drink.
It is not.
It is not.
It doesn't have to be. And
Okay.
mine certainly isn't. And that's why I didn't like it at first, because a lot of people make theirs very sweet. But fermentation in general, you ferment to the driest level.
Okay.
And then after the yeast is gone, you can decide how sweet you want to make it with additional honey and fruits and things like that. So I would say ours is mostly semi-sweet.
Okay.
I would agree. And you mentioned being this mad scientist and all the flavors. And so the mead that you have, it's not just one type and that's all you have. You're constantly creating new flavors. And just talk about that. I mean, how that's so very different than, say, wine or something like that.
And that is why I chose mead, because I think that with wine, there are preconceived notions of what it should taste like, right? Even if you have just a sweet red, there's some preconceived notions that it should taste a certain way. And, same with beer. There's a million different craft beers out there, but they always fall into certain categories where it's an IPA or a stout or a lager, and it should taste a certain way. With mead, there's really no preconceived notions of the flavors that it should take on. It's a great canvas. I did give myself some rules. I think, as I told you when we first met, because mead is such a great canvas for flavor, you can get a little crazy. And I didn't want to have a menu with 50 different flavors. So as far as our meads that are, the traditional style, full strength, 12 to 14% alcohol that are in bottles to sell, we only use ingredients that are unique to the Midwest, that are familiar to be grown in the Midwest. So I think I grew up with flavors very young. Until I was in high school and staying at friends' houses, I had never even had a food that was in a box or a can before. We grew everything. We preserved everything. We canned everything. We made it all from scratch. That was my mom's side. And then my stepdad, he was a cook in the Army. He was a chef at a local restaurant. So I feel like I got both sides of the coin when it came to flavor, and my palate was developed pretty early on. So I just love flavors, and I love that mead is such a soft canvas, and it allows you to let the flavors be the star of the show.
Yeah. I think the way you described it when we first met was if it's not available or doesn't grow in the Midwest, it doesn't go in my bottle.
If it doesn't grow here, it doesn't go in here.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. In the bottles. Now the carbonation, which is only in the tasting room, that's where I still get to be a mad scientist and be very experimental with flavors from everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. So I mentioned the Shawnee Hills, or the Rolling Hills, and the Shawnee Hills Wine Trail, of course, in Southern Illinois. We have the wine trail, we have breweries, but this is the first meadery, right?
We are the only meadery in Southern Illinois.
Okay. How do you see that complementing what already exists? Lots of folks, locals and folks come from miles and miles around for the Shawnee Hills Wine Trail. So how have you maybe benefited from that existing wine trail, and how does it complement what's there?
Oh, our location is definitely by design. We knew that mead would be something that would initially be hard to market because so many people don't know what it is. But when you have groups on the wine trail, that is their mission, is to taste and try different wines. And there's people in the group that like beer. I think that they're just in that mindset to be adventurous. So being along the Shawnee Wine Trail, we're not members of it, but we are smack dab in the middle of it, I think was a brilliant strategy on our part to get people to come in and experience what mead is. And that has been very effective.
And the other businesses have been very supportive, it sounds like.
Super supportive. And I wasn't sure. I didn't know if they would see us as competition or maybe not take us seriously or see us as legitimate because we didn't have vineyards or, things like that. But everyone has been extremely supportive. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to come back home to Southern Illinois, because I knew this was the right community.
Well said.
Yeah. So you don't have acres and acres of vineyards, right? You have a smaller property. What does that look like? If I'm going to come there, can you describe what the experience or what?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are on Wing Hill Road in Cobden, so it's a beautiful drive. We have a very long driveway, tree-lined, lots of green rolling hills. We're on about 12 acres.
Okay.
And initially, before we put the sign at the end of the road, you may have thought you were driving up to someone's home.
Okay.
In fact, that's a vacation rental, so we're on VRBO and Airbnb for that. And on the left-hand side, you'll see we have actually converted a large garage into our temporary tasting room facility. We do have a patio now as well.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then when you have no idea what to expect. And then you walk in and it's so fun to see everyone's faces when they walk in and they just look around and go, wow, this is real. This is legit. So it's cozy. We have about 30 seats inside. But I think it's the perfect size for us right now.
Yeah. And do you have events? Do you have food? What do you offer?
We are working on food trucks. So
Okay.
I do have several food trucks scheduled on Saturday. We don't have food because we are in our small temporary facility currently. That's a goal of ours in a few years. We are also working on events. We've just started an event called Mead and Musings, and those will be after hours on Friday nights. That's a ticketed event once a month where we invite local professors or just subject matter experts to give really interesting talks about something they're passionate about while having mead.
Yeah.
Think of it like a TED Talks with alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that advertised. I think that's a really cool concept.
It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk marketing. That's your background in some ways. And then, as I mentioned, my husband and I found Honey Heist Mead Company on social media. Everyone was just sharing and excited and just really raving about this new business. How did you go about the marketing, and what do you attribute to it taking off so quickly?
We actually tried to be very quiet initially. We opened at the end of January because I have zero experience in a tasting room. My husband's like a bull in a china shop, so I was very concerned on how he would be behind the bar on the weekends helping out. So we tried to be quiet, and we did share. I built the website, I built the Facebook page. We shared that on a couple of local Facebook pages, and others just took it and ran with it. You know what? One thing I knew is that people that love mead really love mead, and they will travel far and wide to find it. And there were enough locally to be so excited about it that they really shared it.
Wow.
Really far, including some local business owners. So I don't know what we would do without social media, honestly. I don't know how they did it 30 years ago. Newspapers, obviously, as a journalism major, I guess I know that. But man, social media, the thing is, it really can make things blow up fast. And so some of our biggest weekends were right when we opened in January.
Yeah.
It's been great.
That's awesome.
And you're also doing a great job of building your Honey Heist Mead community with photos, and talk about what's behind that with the photos and the alibi.
Yeah, so when we converted our temporary tasting room it was a garage, and I really disliked the garage door. I didn't know what to do with it, but I didn't want to take it out because I knew eventually we would use that space for more production area, so we needed it. So I turned the inside of the garage door into something called the Mead Mob. And, our saying or our quote is, "I'm just here to establish an alibi," because the brand is all about crooks and criminals and highwaymen, and establishing an alibi went with that theme. So the garage door is for our Mead Mob, and those are for our loyal customers, enthusiastic customers, and customers that just spend a lot of money, and we want to make their day special by commemorating it. We snap a old school Polaroid, have them sign it, and we put it on the mob to establish the
That is
alibi.
awesome. So outside of marketing, you have quite a bit of leadership experience and business experience. How have you used those skills in this business?
I am an efficiency fiend. I literally count how many times I push buttons on the microwave. Is it better to hit the plus 30 2 times or the 100 start? I mean, to that level of detail. So I've definitely been able to make our business as efficient as possible. Also, just the communication in the tasting room, understanding that I am the brand and how important it is to treat customers and guests. And in my last role, I ran 17 stores in Washington, D.C. that were about $150 million in revenue. Yeah. So just understanding profit and loss statements and customer service. And I think my biggest strength by far is just conflict resolution, honestly. And I've been able to use that just between myself and my partners, with customers, with vendors, problem resolution, being way out in the country, that's a whole other set of issues sometimes. Yeah. So just being able to be under stress or under pressure and taking that as an opportunity to kind of problem solve has really been invaluable.
Good. You've referred to your business partners. Do you want to state who they are and tell us about their strengths and how you guys work together?
Yeah. So my husband is one business partner, and he is the one that introduced me to Mead, like I stated earlier.
And his name is?
His name is Josh, and he is all numbers. He is all business, and he make sure that we have a good plan, that it's cost effective. We're thinking short-term and long-term when it comes to how we're spending our money, how we're building out. Michelle is my other partner. She's been my best friend for 25 years since we met in boot camp.
How fun.
Wow. And your business partners and still friends.
We are still friends. We've been wanting to have a business even way before Josh was in the picture. Cool. We've had so many different business ideas over the years, but we're both very patient and want to wait until the time was right. And this was definitely it. And she was actually brought in because when we were looking for property, initially we just wanted a piece of land so that we could build out gradually. But we kept coming across this property on Wing Hill, and it was the perfect location. But it had this giant house on it that we didn't need because we lived in Washington, D.C. and didn't really plan on moving back for several years. So we didn't know what to do with it. And she is all into real estate investment and has run many vacation rentals. So we brought her in order to help us get that up and running, which was great because not only did it help us use the revenue from one business to invest in the other, but it sped up our timeline significantly in terms of being able to move back and open.
Russ, I can see your wheels spinning on workshops here, right? Like partnerships,
always thinking,
leadership, teamwork, retail, all of those things. So I also know that you've had a lot of help along the way, and I'll let you talk about what additional help you've had, but in particular, the Small Business Development Center at SIU has been instrumental in a recent pitch competition, and you mentioned also your military experience, so woman-owned business, veteran-owned business. Talk about some of those support systems that are in place.
Absolutely. So I am very grateful to Melissa Roach. She just randomly tagged me in a post of an upcoming session that was all about, I think it was about trademarks. And
she's at the Small Business Development Center.
She is at the Small Business Development Center. So she tagged me. I had signed up to meet with some of the advisors, and I had gone in and met with the advisors. And at that time, I didn't know what else they had to offer. And then she tagged me in a post on Facebook about an upcoming session about trademarks. And so I signed up for that one. And then I signed up for another one. And then I saw that they were doing this pitch competition for a grant. And what brand new small business doesn't need a grant? But it ended up being so much more than that. I mean, I learned that there were so many advisors and they each had their own strengths. So now I know if I want to improve in this area, or if I want to brainstorm in this area, or if I'm having an issue in this area, I know exactly which advisor to sign up for. And I've actually started calling the small business incubators and development centers, when I explain those to others that are thinking about starting a business, I describe it as your entrepreneur GPS. They may not know the answer, but they will point you in the right direction of where to go. And that, and in addition to networking with peers that were in the class, we started with 10 of us. So I mean, it was, I felt like I left that experience with a huge network and support system.
Right.
We mentioned this a number of times on the podcast, but the SBDCs they offer no cost services, so it's free, and they're all throughout the country. So no matter where people are listening, they can find one.
What's unique in business about a meadery? How's a meadery, how is it different with business, another winery or another?
It's very physical. We deal, in the last 10 months since we started professionally brewing, we've purchased 4,200 pounds of honey.
Right.
And those are 60-pound buckets.
Right.
So everything from going and picking them up to putting them in the car to loading them into what we call the vault, which is our honey warmer that we built to keep it nice and liquid, to lifting them and putting them in the fermenters.
And how long can you store that honey?
Honey lasts forever.
It does, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It might crystallize from water dehydrating, but it will rehydrate.
Okay. I was wondering, because it was like back to Josh getting the numbers right, because a lot of places over order, the product, but if honey can be stored, that's great.
It absolutely can. Yeah. So spoilage isn't something we have to worry about, which is nice.
Yeah.
But that, I think, is the biggest. And then also just the lack of information and resources, because meaderies are the smallest market in the adult beverage industry, also the fastest growing, but there's not a lot of resources or mentors out there to ask questions to. If I have, even though, Brett and Regina from Starview, they're right next door, and Brett is a wealth of information. There's so much he can't help me with because he doesn't deal with honey, and it's different.
So you're pioneering in many ways. You're a trailblazer here. Yeah. So since there's not somebody who's directly a mentor in the field, you pioneer in this area, who has been cheerleaders for you in this business?
So definitely my two partners, they respect the fact that I have left my job and this is my full-time position, and that there's a lot of pressure, and every day they give me positive reinforcement and recognize me for the effort. But I'd really like to recognize my mom for all of her effort.
What's her name?
Her name is Becky.
Becky. And
we have not lived in the same town in decades. And she's 73 years old, and she lost the love of her life a couple of years ago, and she was just ready for a new chapter. And so moving back has given her purpose. She started helping us before we ever opened, and she's literally never missed a day since we were open. Just being there, just listening, just helping out however she can. She looks forward to it. Yeah. I've had to order twice as many business cards as I thought I'd ever need because she gives them out to everyone.
That is awesome.
I'm sure she is so proud.
She is so proud, and it's just our first time being able to be adults together since forever.
That's awesome.
So it's been great to see her kind of step up and be re-energized.
That's
so late in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Go Becky.
Yeah.
We've had several stories like that. Dinger Bats, as a father and a son, and just different folks working together. I think that's a really special time. For
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. Any business tips for people that are has a concept like a meadery that is not here, like something totally new, and some encouragement for them?
Absolutely. Well, I think that starting any business, no matter if it's a completely new concept or not, those initial nuts and bolts are the same. As far as establishing your LLC, your EIN, your trademarking your name or your logo. And I think I didn't know that the Small Business Development Center existed when I did those things. And that I fell into some pitfalls that I believe they could have saved me from. Sure. So absolutely going out and looking for that small business incubator or development center that's in your area, because you don't know what you don't know.
Good point.
But also, just don't be afraid to reach out, even if there's not somebody local. I have in my phone lists upon lists in my OneNote of meaderies that I contacted just via phone, via email, Facebook message, in person, just popping in. Yeah. And people love to talk about their business and help other people succeed. Yeah. Especially if you're not right up the street as competition. So broaden your search. Look for people across the country or even across the world. I think there's a meadery in Australia that I followed very closely because they were doing very much the same thing from scratch. Yeah. So don't be afraid to reach out, because people will respond.
Yeah.
So we've talked about mentors and support, you being a woman in business. Another place that our paths crossed was actually at the Small Business Incubator at SIU, and it was when Lieutenant Governor Stratton visited and was just asking a room full of women business owners how the state of Illinois could help. And you and I and another person sat at the same table together, and you brought up a group that you had been a part of in the past, a social media group of women supporting women. And when the session got over, I mentioned to Lieutenant Governor Stratton about this idea and that we were going to do it in Southern Illinois. And then I went, oh my goodness, like that means we have to do it in Southern Illinois now. So within a couple of weeks, you had created this new group called Ladies of Southern Illinois. Tell us about that, maybe about the inspiration for that and how it can help other women in business.
Absolutely. So I was part of a group called Ladies of Alexandria when I lived in the Washington, D.C. area. And, at my age, with my husband working from home, we had no kids. We really didn't have a way to get out and meet people. And so I joined this group, and what was awesome is somebody could just post, hey, I'd really like to go on a hike in this area. I know it's not safe to go by myself. Does anybody want to come along? And next thing you know, you have this whole hiking group that started. There was a lady that had just moved to the area and really wanted to go see a play at the Kennedy Center, but she didn't want to go alone. Next thing you know, there was a whole group of them going together.
So it doesn't have to be women in business. It could be any sort of support or interests.
Absolutely. But we had so many different events, and I met so many people, and I just thought, this was just a Facebook group. This isn't hard to do. And so when we were at the meeting with the Lieutenant Governor, she said something that really, I think, got Mel excited, because she said, as a woman in business or politics, it's important to be in the room where the important conversations happen, and that's not typically in a boardroom or a meeting. It's usually on the golf course or in the poker room. And Mel knew that my husband Josh is a poker player. He actually put himself through college in cash, paid for it from his poker winnings.
No kidding.
There we go.
We're actually going to Las Vegas for him to play in the World Series of Poker in June. So when she said that, it's important to be in the room where it happens, Mel looked and said, doesn't your husband play poker? Can he teach some of us ladies? Yeah. And so that really prompted me to hurry up and make this group Ladies of Southern Illinois. And I think we hit 1,000 members in like 2 weeks.
Yes.
And so now I do believe, since we have enough members, it's time to start making some events, maybe a speed friending event in a park, but something where ladies of like interests and minds can find each other and feel supported. We have a lot of awesome women business owners in that group, and there's so much that we can learn from each other.
Fantastic.
Very cool. It's time for your question.
It's time for my question, my favorite question of every interview. So, Jackie, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
What is my why? So I have a couple of whys. I've always wanted to have a business in Southern Illinois. What that business was, I wasn't sure. But I've also always loved flavors. Restaurants just seemed hectic. And like I said, my wine was like jet fuel. So flavors really and mead really came together for me. And this was the right community to introduce it, to be where all of these wineries are, where that's a small town destination for people that have either come here for school or for a graduation from someone that went to school, or their work took them here. I just wanted to be part of Southern Illinois and be a business owner and have an influence. I was the first kid in my family to graduate from high school, let alone college.
Wow.
And to let other kids know, or people from the same backgrounds as I, to not feel like you don't deserve space like everybody else does. If you have a dream, it doesn't matter what your background is or who your family is, you can do it.
That's awesome.
And that's why I love that question.
Yeah.
That was powerful. Thank you so
That's so
much.
cool.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
What's in the future for Jackie and Honey Heist?
So we're really new. You know, we just did our ribbon cutting 2 months ago, and we have a lot of plans in the pipeline for sure. With our new event that I talked about, Mead and Musings, we really want to make that big because that's part of that community and the community discussion and opportunities that I talked about. But also, you know, I think next we would like to partner with a couple of independently owned restaurants and grocery stores to make ourselves available beyond just the tasting room. And I think that's something we'll work towards pretty vigorously in the fourth quarter. And then, you know, a bigger tasting room. We'll be building a bigger tasting room in the next couple of years.
Excellent. So how do we find you, Honey Heist, online?
We have a website, honeyheistmeadco.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, Honey Heist Mead Co. Or you can just come to our tasting room at on Wing Hill Road, 4620 in
4620.
Cobden. Yep.
Yep. Excellent.
Check it out.
Thank
you again so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excellent. You're great at interviewing. You must have been in radio and television at one time.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes,
absolutely,
yeah. Excellent.
It helps being a platoon sergeant in the Marine Corps when you're outnumbered, like women to men, by 1,000.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Communication's important. Yep. So.
Thank you again.
And thank you for joining another episode of the Small Town Big Business Podcast. I want to thank our sponsors for making this possible, and that includes Arcadia Wealth Group, Black Diamond Harley Davidson and RV, Fowler Heating and Cooling, the Swinford Media Group, the Watermark Auto Group Foundation, Banterra Bank, and also Southern Illinois Now. And we can't forget our producer, Luke O'Neill at Union Street Arts. Thanks for making this possible. I also want to direct you to our website, ethosmarion.org. You can find out a lot about our training and development. We've got some great workshops that are happening this summer, one on public speaking, another on digital marketing, financial classes that you can take, help your business, help your nonprofit grow. And you can also find the Small Town Big Business podcast. We've got links to our YouTube podcast and also the podcast platforms where you can find past episodes, almost 100 episodes of the Small Town Big Business podcast.
And as Russ said, don't forget to join the Small Town Big Business community on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. Just search Small Town Big Business. And again, while you're there, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your friends. We have a great library of episodes available. Again, I'm Deb Barnett, also with Southern Illinois Now. You can find us at southernillinoisnow.org or on Facebook, Instagram, all the things. So thanks again for joining us and have a great day.
Yep, thank you.